Hey, ever wish you could spice up your everyday conversations?
Mm-hmm.
Well, get ready to unlock the secret code of idioms.
Yeah.
You know, those tricky phrases that can totally make your language pop?
Right.
We're diving deep into a collection of 15 today. And trust me, by the end of this deep dive, you'll be weaving them into your speech like a pro.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing how idioms can transform the way we express ourselves. They add color and personality and even a touch of humor.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a category that I think is close to everyone's heart.
Okay.
Success and failure. First up is a blessing in disguise.
Ooh, interesting one.
I remember this one time. I was absolutely convinced I aced a job interview.
Mm-hmm.
I was already picturing myself in the corner office. Then radio silence. No call, no email, nothing. I was crushed.
Oh, no.
But then a few weeks later, a much better opportunity came up. One that was a perfect fit for my skills and passions. Talk about a silver lining, right?
Wow. What's fascinating about a blessing in disguise is that it reminds us that setbacks can often pave the way for something even better.
Yeah.
It encourages us to look beyond the initial disappointment and trust that things might actually be working out in our favor.
Yeah, it's like that saying, when one door closes, another one opens.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's shift gears to burning the midnight oil. I think we've all been there, especially when deadlines are looming.
Now tell me about it.
Picture this. Coffee mugs piled high, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating the room, and that feeling of pushing through exhaustion because you're so close to the finish line.
Burning the midnight oil is such a vivid image of intense effort and dedication.
Right.
It speaks to our drive to achieve something, even if it means sacrificing sleep, and pushing our limits. But it also raises the question of work-life balance.
Oh, yeah.
And the importance of sustainable effort.
That's such a good point. Sometimes we need to pace ourselves instead of constantly burning the candle at both ends. All right, now for an idiom that puts the power back in your hands, the ball is in your court. I love this one because it implies that you have the agency to make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're not waiting for permission or someone else to take the lead. You're calling the shots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The ball is in your court. Shifts the focus from external factors to personal responsibility. It reminds us that we have choices to make and actions to take. It's a very empowering idiom. It encourages us to step up and take ownership of our lives.
Okay, so we've tackled success and failure, but often those two things are intertwined with something else. Time.
Oh, absolutely.
And that leads us to our next category.
Yes.
Let's start with a classic. Better late than never. I mean, who hasn't procrastinated?
Yeah.
A little or a lot. But hey, at least we eventually get it done, right?
Right. Better late than never acknowledges that while timing is important, it's not always the deciding factor. It emphasizes the value of completion, even if there have been delays or setbacks. It's a reminder that it's never too late to start, to try again, or to finish what we've begun.
And sometimes things happen once in a blue moon, which honestly makes them even more special.
Right.
It's like spotting a shooting star, winning the lottery, or finding that perfect vintage dress you've been searching for forever.
Once in a blue moon beautifully captures the rarity and unexpected nature of certain occurrences. It reminds us to savor those special moments when they do happen because they might not come around again for a long time.
It's like that saying, make the most of every opportunity. All right, now let's talk about those times when we get something done just in the nick of time. It's that heart-stopping moment when you almost miss your flight, but you manage to sprint through the airport and make it just as the gate is closing.
Oh, I've been there.
Oh, haven't we all?
In the nick of time really emphasizes urgency. And it highlights that narrow margin between success and failure in certain situations. It's a reminder to stay focused, be adaptable, and sometimes trust our instincts to make those split-second decisions.
It's like that feeling of dodging a bullet, right?
Exactly.
Now, even when time is ticking away, we often find ourselves facing challenges head-on, which brings us to our next category.
Okay.
Overcoming obstacles. Let's start with an idiom that takes a bit of grit. Fight the bullet. Have you ever had to just clench your jaw and do something you really didn't want to do but knew it had to be done?
Oh, of course. We all have. Biting the bullet is all about facing a fear or an unpleasant task head-on, even if it's uncomfortable. It's a demonstration of courage, resilience, and the understanding that sometimes the only way out is through.
That's like ripping off a bandage. Sometimes it's better to just get it over with quickly. Okay, now let's talk about go the extra mile. This idiom isn't just about meeting expectations, it's about exceeding them.
Yeah.
It's about that extra effort, that willingness to go above and beyond that can make all the difference.
Yeah, going the extra mile is a testament to our dedication and commitment. It's about pushing ourselves further, doing more than what's required, and striving for excellence. It's a quality that sets people apart and leaves a lasting impression.
It's like that saying, good is the enemy of great. But let's be real, some problems are just a tough nut to crack, no matter how much effort we put in. It's those challenges that test our patience, our resourcefulness, and sometimes even our sanity.
Right. A tough nut to crack acknowledges that some obstacles are inherently more difficult to overcome. It requires persistence, creative problem solving, and sometimes even a willingness to step back and reassess our approach.
Sometimes you need a different tool to crack that nut, right?
Well-
But, sometimes the toughest challenges involve other people.
Yeah,
Relationships, while rewarding, can also present their own unique set of hurdles.
absolutely. And speaking of relationships, let's move on to some idioms that capture the nuances of navigating the social world. We'll start with break the ice. Imagine you're at a networking event surrounded by new faces. That initial awkwardness can be a bit daunting, but all it takes is one well-placed question
Yeah.
or a shared observation to get the conversation flowing.
It's like that first domino that sets everything else in motion.
Yes.
Now, sometimes you meet someone, you just click instantly, you get along like a house on fire. It's that effortless connection, that shared sense of humor and understanding that makes you feel like you've known each other forever.
Yeah, get along like a house on fire is a wonderfully vivid idiom that depicts a strong, almost immediate rapport between people. It speaks to that feeling of finding your tribe, those people with whom you connect on a deeper level.
It's like finding that missing piece of the puzzle.
Right.
And then, of course, there are those times when you need a shoulder to cry on. Life throws curveballs, and having someone who listens without judgment, offers a comforting hug, and simply lets you be vulnerable can be incredibly healing.
It's true. A shoulder to cry on highlights the importance of empathy, compassion, and genuine support in our relationships. It speaks to that deep human need for connection and understanding, especially during times of emotional distress.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, exploring idioms for different life situations. But now let's lighten things up with some general idioms that you can sprinkle into your everyday conversations just to add a touch of spice.
I like that. These are the idioms that add personality and flair to our language, making our conversations more engaging and memorable.
First up is piece of cake. It's that feeling of effortlessness when something turns out to be much easier than you expected.
Yeah. Piece of cake effectively conveys a sense of ease and simplicity. It's a lighthearted way to describe a task that requires minimal effort and brings a smile to your face.
It's like that feeling of nailed it without even breaking a sweat. But on the flip side, sometimes secrets get revealed and the beans get spilled. Imagine that moment when someone lets slip a juicy piece of gossip and everyone's ears perk up.
Spill the beans adds a touch of drama and intrigue to the act of revealing confidential information. It often implies an element of surprise, perhaps a bit of mischief, and it definitely piques our curiosity.
It's like that collective gasp in a movie when a long-held secret is finally revealed. And finally, we have On Cloud 9, which perfectly captures that feeling of pure joy and bliss. Think about those moments when you're absolutely ecstatic, landing your dream job, acing that big presentation, or simply spending a perfect day with loved ones.
Yeah, On Cloud 9 evokes a sense of euphoria, an overwhelming happiness. It's a feeling of weightlessness, like you're floating on air, completely carefree and content.
It's like the world is your oyster, and you're ready to embrace all the possibilities. We've covered 15 fantastic idioms so far, but the journey doesn't end here.
Stay tuned, because in Part 2, we'll delve deeper into the world of idioms, exploring their origins, cultural significance, and even some common pitfalls to avoid.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating world of idioms. We've already uncovered 15 gems, but there's so much more to explore.
Yeah, it's like we've opened a treasure chest, and there are still, layers upon layers of linguistic gold to be discovered. Exactly. And, as we delve deeper, we start to see that idioms aren't just about colorful language.
Right.
They offer a glimpse into the history, culture, and even the humor of a society.
So, spill the beans isn't just a fun way to say reveal a secret. It actually tells us something about how people view secrets and gossip.
Precisely. Spill the beans suggests an element of impulsiveness, maybe even a little bit of mischief, in the act of revealing something confidential. It's like that irresistible urge to share something juicy, even if we know we probably shouldn't.
That's so interesting. It's like those scenes in movies where the music gets all dramatic and you just know someone's about to let something slip. But speaking of secrets, I've always wondered about the origin of the phrase, once in a blue moon. Where did that come from?
Well, the actual origin is a bit murky, but there are a few theories. One suggests it comes from a rare astronomical phenomenon where the moon appears blue due to atmospheric conditions. Another ties it to the old saying, to lie like a blue moon, meaning to tell a blatant falsehood. Regardless of its origin, once in a blue moon has come to represent something that happens very infrequently, making those rare events even more special.
So next time I win the lottery, I can say I finally got lucky once in a blue moon and sound super knowledgeable about the history of the phrase.
Exactly.
But, sometimes things happen that aren't quite as lucky, even if they seem like it at first.
Yeah.
Like, what about that idiom, a blessing in disguise?
Yes. A blessing in disguise is a powerful reminder that even when things go wrong, there's often a silver lining. It encourages us to look for the potential positive outcomes that might arise from a seemingly negative situation.
It's like that saying, every cloud has a silver lining.
Yeah.
But what I find interesting is that sometimes people use a blessing in disguise to kind of dismiss someone else's pain, like, oh, you lost your job. Well, maybe it's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
It can feel a bit insensitive, don't you think?
That's a really insightful observation, and it highlights the importance of being mindful of the context in which we use idioms. While a blessing in disguise can be a powerful way to reframe our own experiences, it's not always appropriate to apply it to someone else's situation, especially when they're still processing the initial shock or disappointment.
So like with any form of communication, empathy and sensitivity are key. Okay, now let's switch gears to a phrase that often pops up in the workplace. Go the extra mile. I know I've been told to do that by a boss or two, but what does it actually mean to go the extra mile?
Well, it's more than just fulfilling the basic requirements of a task. It's about going above and beyond, exceeding expectations, and showing a genuine dedication to excellence.
So it's not enough to just meet the deadline. You have to deliver something truly exceptional.
Exactly. Think about those colleagues who consistently deliver high-quality work, are always willing to help others, and go that extra step to ensure everything is perfect. Those are the people who truly embody the spirit of going the extra mile.
And I bet those are the people who also get noticed and rewarded for their effort.
Absolutely. Because going the extra mile demonstrates not just competence, but also initiative, a strong work ethic, and a genuine desire to contribute.
It's like that saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get. But I imagine there are times when even going the extra mile isn't enough to, crack a really tough problem. What about those situations where you're faced with something that feels impossible to solve?
Well, that's where the idiom, a tough nut to crack, comes in. It acknowledges that some challenges are inherently more difficult to overcome, requiring persistence, resourcefulness, and maybe even a bit of outside-the-box thinking.
So like when you're staring at a jigsaw puzzle with a million pieces and it feels like you'll never finish it.
Exactly. But even the most complex puzzles can be solved with patience and the right approach. And sometimes those tough nuts to crack can lead to the most rewarding breakthroughs.
It's like that feeling of accomplishment when you finally figure something out after hours of struggling. But, sometimes those tough nuts involve other people, which can make things even more complex.
Absolutely, because relationships add a whole other layer of dynamics and emotions to any situation.
And speaking of relationships, we talked about break the ice and get along like a house on fire earlier, but those are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to idioms about human connection, right?
Absolutely. And in part 3 of our deep dive, we'll explore even more idioms that capture the joys, challenges, and complexities of navigating the social world.
Welcome back. I'm ready to jump back into this treasure chest of idioms.
Me too, me too.
It's amazing how these phrases can add so much depth and personality to our conversations.
It's like we're uncovering the secret code of communication, learning to speak in a language that's both colorful and insightful.
We've talked about idioms for success and failure, time, challenges, and even secrets.
Right.
But there's one category that we haven't explored as in depth. Idioms about relationships.
Right.
and the complexities of human connection.
Ah, yes, those phrases that capture the joys and the struggles and everything in between when it comes to navigating the social world.
Exactly. We touched on break the ice and get along like a house on fire earlier.
Right.
But there are so many more idioms that shed light on the dynamics of relationships. For instance, what about those times when you need someone to be there for you no matter what?
The classic, a shoulder to cry on. This idiom beautifully captures the essence of empathy and support, highlighting the importance of having someone to lean on during difficult times.
It's like that feeling of knowing you're not alone, that there's someone who cares and is willing to listen without judgment.
Exactly. It speaks to the power of human connection and the comfort we find in sharing our vulnerabilities with someone we trust.
Yeah. It's like that saying, a burden shared is a burden halved. But, sometimes even with the best support system, life throws us curveballs that feel like they happen once in a blue moon.
Right, right. Once in a blue moon reminds us that life is full of surprises, both wonderful and challenging. It's those rare and unexpected events that can shake things up and test our resilience.
It's like that feeling of, where did that come from? Or I never saw that coming. But even in those moments of surprise, sometimes what we initially perceive as a setback turns out to be a blessing in disguise.
That's a great point. A blessing in disguise encourages us to look for the silver lining, even when faced with adversity. It's that shift in perspective that allows us to see the potential for growth and positive change, even in difficult situations.
It's like realizing that sometimes the universe has a plan, even when we can't see it in the moment. But speaking of plans, what about those times when we need to make a tough decision and just, go for it?
That's where bite the bullet comes in. It's that feeling of taking a deep breath and facing a fear or an unpleasant task head on, knowing that it's something you need to do, even if it's uncomfortable.
It's like that feeling of ripping off a bandage or jumping into a cold pool. Sometimes it's better to just get it over with quickly. But once we've bitten the bullet, hopefully the task turns out to be a piece of cake.
You got it. Piece of cake is that feeling of effortlessness when something we anticipated being difficult turns out to be surprisingly easy.
It's like that feeling of, I totally got this. But life isn't always a piece of cake. Sometimes we encounter those challenges that feel like a tough nut to crack.
Absolutely. A tough nut to crack acknowledges that some problems are inherently more difficult to overcome. They require persistence, creative problem solving, and a willingness to experiment with different approaches until we find a solution.
It's like those puzzles that keep you guessing, but the satisfaction of finally solving them makes it all worthwhile.
Exactly. And sometimes the process of cracking those tough nuts leads to the most valuable learning experiences.
It's like that saying, the only way to do great work is to love what you do. What I love most about learning about idioms is that it's like unlocking a secret code to understanding how people express themselves.
I couldn't agree more. It's like gaining a deeper appreciation for the nuances of language and the cultural tapestry that these phrases represent.
So to wrap things up, what's your biggest takeaway from our deep dive into the world of idioms?
Well, I think it's that idioms aren't just about using fancy language. They're about connecting with people on a deeper level, sharing experiences, and expressing complex ideas in a way that's both memorable and meaningful.
Beautifully said. So there you have it, folks. A whirlwind tour of 15 fascinating idioms. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive.
Yeah.
And that you'll continue to explore the colorful world of language, sprinkling a little idiomatic magic into your conversations.
Absolutely.
Remember, communication is an art, and idioms are the brushstrokes that add color, depth, and personality to our canvas of expression. So go out there and paint your world with words.
Until next time, happy speaking.